Emily Harper's 2-week-old son Lucas was her miracle baby after 2 miscarriages. But in one moment of rage, neighborhood HOA President Margaret Thompson grabbed the infant and hurled him from a second-story window. As sirens wailed and blood pooled beneath her dead child, Emily knew justice would require revenge. Before watching full story, comment below from where are you watching. Also like and subscribe for more stories. Emily and David Harper had waited 5 long years for their miracle baby. They met in college when Emily was studying to be a teacher and David was learning to fix cars. They were both from poor families, so they understood each other's struggles. "One day we'll have a beautiful family," David promised Emily on their wedding day. "A house with a white fence, kids playing in the yard." Emily smiled through her tears. "I can't wait." But the road to parenthood was painful. The first pregnancy ended at 8 weeks. Emily cried for days, blaming herself. "Maybe I'm not meant to be a mother," she whispered to David one night. David held her close. "Don't say that. You'll be the best mom in the world. We just have to keep trying." The second loss came at 12 weeks, just when they thought they were safe. Emily had already bought tiny clothes and a crib. After the doctor gave them the bad news, she went home and packed everything away. "I can't look at these anymore," she sobbed. David found her in the empty nursery that night, sitting on the floor. We can't give up. What if something's wrong with me? What if I can't carry a baby? Then we'll figure something else out. But I know in my heart our baby is coming." When Emily got pregnant with Lucas, they were scared to hope. For 9 months they held their breath. Every doctor visit, every test, every kick in Emily's belly was a small victory. When Lucas finally arrived, screaming and healthy, they both cried tears of joy. "Look at him," Emily whispered, holding their son for the first time. "He's perfect." David touched the baby's tiny hand. "Hey there, little man. I'm your dad." Lucas had David's blue eyes and Emily's nose. He was their miracle, their dream come true. When Lucas was 6 months old, they moved to Willow Creek. It seemed like the perfect place to raise their son. The houses were neat, the streets were clean, and there was a good school nearby. "This is it," Emily said as they pulled into the driveway of their small but cozy house. "Our forever home." David carried Lucas inside while Emily looked around. The house had 3 bedrooms, one for them, one for Lucas, and one for the future siblings they hoped to give him. The backyard was perfect for a swing set and maybe a sandbox. On their first day, a woman knocked on their door. She was tall and thin, with gray hair pulled back tightly. Her smile looked fake. "Hello, I'm Margaret Thompson, but everyone calls me Maggie. I'm the president of the Homeowners Association. Welcome to Willow Creek." Emily opened the door wider. "Hi, I'm Emily, and this is my husband David. And this little one is Lucas." Maggie barely glanced at the baby. "How nice. Now, I need to go over some rules with you." She handed Emily a thick packet of papers. "No loud music after 8 p.m. Grass must be cut every week. No decorations without written approval. Trash bins must be inside by 9 a.m. on pickup day." Emily flipped through the pages. There were dozens of rules about everything from paint colors to plant types. "Wow, this is detailed." "Rules keep the neighborhood nice," Maggie said firmly. "I hope you'll follow them better than the last family who lived here. They were very problematic." David joined them at the door. "We'll do our best, Mrs. Thompson." After Maggie left, Emily looked worried. "She seems strict." "She's probably just particular," David said. "Don't worry about it." But Emily had a bad feeling in her stomach. The problem started small. Their mailbox was painted black, but Maggie said it was the wrong shade of black, and fined them $50. When they put up Christmas lights, she complained they were too bright and excessive. Another fine. David paid the fines without arguing. "It's not worth the fight," he told Emily. But the complaints kept coming. Their grass was 1 inch too long. Their car was parked 2 inches over the line. Emily's flower garden was too wild looking. One day when Lucas was 8 months old, Emily was carrying groceries and Lucas when Maggie appeared. "Your trash bin has been out for 3 hours past the deadline," Maggie announced. Emily shifted Lucas to her other arm. The baby was getting heavy and the grocery bags were cutting into her fingers. "I'm sorry, Mrs. Thompson. I was at the store. I'll move it right now." "The rules don't have exceptions," Maggie said coldly. "That's another $100 fine." $100? For being a few hours late? Emily couldn't believe it. Money was already tight with David's mechanic's salary and her teacher's pay, especially with baby expenses. "Maybe if you spent less time making excuses and more time following rules, you wouldn't have this problem," Maggie snapped. Emily felt her face get hot. Look, I'm doing my best. I have a baby, I work full-time, and I'm trying to keep up with everything. That baby is not my problem, Maggie said, walking away. That night, Emily told David what happened. She's getting worse. It's like she has nothing better to do than watch us. David rubbed his temples. I'll talk to some neighbors, see if she does this to everyone. The next day, David talked to Tom, who lived 3 houses down. Tom shook his head sadly. Maggie drove out 2 families before you moved in. She made their lives hell until they couldn't take it anymore. Can't anyone stop her? David asked. She's been HOA president for 10 years. She has supporters who are scared to cross her. And technically she's not breaking any laws. That evening, David and Emily sat in their living room while Lucas played on his blanket. Maybe we should move, Emily said quietly. We just got here. We can't let her win, David replied. But inside he was getting angry. Very angry. Things got worse when Lucas turned 1. He was walking now, which meant he fell down sometimes and cried. He was also teething, so he woke up at night. One night around 2 a.m., Lucas was screaming from ear pain. Emily and David took turns walking him around the house, trying everything to comfort him. After an hour, he finally fell asleep. The next morning, Maggie was at their door again. Your baby kept the whole neighborhood awake last night. That's disturbing the peace. Emily stared at her. He's teething. He's in pain. What did you want us to do? Let him suffer? You could have taken him to your car and driven somewhere else until he stopped crying, Maggie said seriously. Are you crazy? Emily's voice got louder. He's a baby. Babies cry. Not in my neighborhood, Maggie snapped back. I'm writing you up for noise violations. David appeared behind Emily. Mrs. Thompson, that's enough. We're not going to drive around at 2 a.m. with a sick baby. Then you shouldn't have had a baby if you can't control it, Maggie said. David's hands clenched into fists. Emily put her hand on his arm to stop him. Just go away, Maggie. Leave us alone. Don't tell me what to do in my own neighborhood, Maggie yelled. She pointed at Lucas, who was in Emily's arms. That thing is a menace. Did you just call my son a thing? Emily's voice was dangerous now. But Maggie was on a roll. Yes. Ever since you moved here with your noise and your mess, this place has gone downhill. You don't belong here. David stepped forward. You need to back off right now. Or what? Maggie challenged. You'll hit an old woman? That would look good for your teaching wife. Emily pulled David back inside. She's not worth it, she whispered, though she was shaking with rage. After they closed the door, David punched the wall. I can't take much more of this. I know, baby. But we can't let her destroy our family. But the damage was already being done. Emily was stressed all the time, worried about what Maggie would complain about next. David was working extra hours to pay for all the fines. They barely had time for each other, let alone enjoying their son. A few months later, Emily discovered she was pregnant again. After 2 miscarriages, she was scared but excited. Lucas is going to be a big brother, she told David, crying happy tears. David spun her around. This is amazing. Our family is growing. But the doctor warned them. Emily, you need to avoid stress. Your body is still recovering from your previous losses, and stress can cause problems. That was easier said than done with Maggie watching their every move. The fines kept coming. Now there were complaints about Emily's waddling to get the mail being unsightly, and David's work truck being too loud when he started it in the morning. One evening when Emily was 4 months pregnant, she was sitting on the front porch with Lucas. He was playing with his toy cars while she rubbed her growing belly. It was a peaceful moment until Maggie appeared. Your son left toys in the common area, Maggie announced, pointing to a single toy car that had rolled onto the sidewalk. Emily looked over. Lucas had been playing right at the edge of their property. I'll get it, she said, starting to stand up slowly. No, make the child get it. He needs to learn responsibility. He's barely 1 year old, Emily said. He doesn't understand property lines. Then you're a bad mother for not teaching him, Maggie said coldly. Something snapped in Emily. Maybe it was the pregnancy hormones, or maybe she was just tired of being pushed around. You know what? I'm sick of you. You're a bitter, lonely old woman who has nothing better to do than make families miserable. Maggie's face turned red. How dare you speak to me like that? I'll speak to you however I want. This is my property and you need to leave. I'll make you regret this, Maggie hissed. I'll make your life hell. You already are, Emily shot back. That night, Emily couldn't sleep. Her stomach was in knots and she worried about the stress affecting the baby. Maybe I shouldn't have said those things, she told David. No, you were right. Someone needed to stand up to her. But they both knew things were about to get much worse. 2 weeks later, Emily gave birth to their second son. They named him Lucas Jr. but called him Luke. He was smaller than his brother had been, born a few weeks early because of Emily's stress. But he was healthy and perfect. Emily was exhausted from the difficult birth and sleepless nights with a newborn. David was doing his best to help, but he still had to work to pay their bills and the mounting HOA fines. On that terrible morning, Emily just needed some fresh air. Luke had been crying all night, and she hadn't slept more than an hour at a time. She wrapped him in his soft blue blanket and stepped onto the front porch. The autumn air was crisp and clean. For a moment, Emily felt peaceful. Luke settled down in her arms, his tiny face relaxed. "That's better, isn't it, baby?" she whispered. Then she heard the sharp click of heels on pavement. Maggie was marching across the street with her clipboard, her face already angry. "Emily, your trash bins are still out and it's past 9 a.m. That's a violation." Emily looked at the clock on her phone. It was 9:15. "I'm sorry, Maggie. I'll get them in a few minutes. The baby has been." "I don't want to hear your excuses," Maggie interrupted. "And look at that flower bed. It's completely unkempt. I've warned you about this before." Emily glanced at her flower garden. It did need weeding, but with a newborn and a toddler, gardening wasn't her priority. "I'll take care of it when I can. David and I have been busy with the new baby." Maggie stepped closer, her voice getting louder. "Everyone else manages to follow the rules. You're not special just because you have children." Luke stirred in Emily's arms and let out a small cry. Emily rocked him gently. "Shoo, it's okay, baby. That crying is disturbing the peace too," Maggie shouted. "Keep that noise inside." Emily felt her temper rising, but she tried to stay calm for Luke's sake. "Maggie, he's 2 weeks old. Babies cry. I'm going inside now." She turned to go back into the house, but Maggie followed her, still yelling. "You think you can just walk away from me? I'm talking to you." "And I'm done listening," Emily said over her shoulder. That's when Maggie lost control. She rushed forward and grabbed Emily's arm. "Don't you dare turn your back on me." Emily spun around, trying to pull away while protecting Luke. "Let go of me." Maggie's eyes were wild with rage. She had been building up to this moment for months, and now all her anger exploded. "You people don't belong here. I'll make sure you're thrown out of this neighborhood." In her fury, Maggie reached for Luke. Maybe she meant to just take him away from Emily, or maybe she wanted to throw him inside the house to stop his crying. But her judgment was completely gone. "Give me that baby," she screamed, yanking at the blanket. "No." Emily screamed back, trying to hold on to her son. But Maggie was stronger than she looked, and Emily was still weak from childbirth. In the struggle, Luke slipped from Emily's arms. Time seemed to slow down as Maggie, in her blind rage, hurled the tiny bundle toward the house. But her aim was terrible. Instead of going through the front door, Luke flew toward the second-story window that was open for fresh air. He hit the window frame and fell, tumbling down to the hard ground below. The sound Luke made when he hit the concrete was something Emily would never forget. It was soft but final, like a book closing forever. "Luke?" Emily's scream could be heard 3 blocks away. She ran down the porch steps and around to where her baby lay motionless on the ground. Blood pooled around Luke's tiny head. His eyes were closed, his little body twisted at an impossible angle. Emily collapsed beside him, gathering him into her arms. "No, no, no," she sobbed. "Wake up, baby. Please wake up." Neighbors started coming out of their houses. Someone was calling 911. But Emily knew it was too late. She could feel that Luke was already gone. David got the call at the garage where he worked. "Mr. Harper, there's been an accident with your baby. You need to come home right away." He dropped everything and drove home faster than he'd ever driven before. When he saw the ambulance and police cars, his heart stopped. When he saw Emily sitting on the ground covered in blood, holding their baby, his world ended. "Emily, what happened?" He fell to his knees beside her. She looked up at him with empty eyes. "She killed him, David. Maggie threw our baby from the window." David looked around and saw Maggie sitting in the back of a police car, yelling at the officers. "It was an accident. She dropped him during our argument. I was just trying to help." The paramedics gently took Luke from Emily's arms. There was nothing they could do. His skull had been crushed in the fall. He had died instantly. At the hospital, Emily sat in a chair staring at nothing while doctors examined her for injuries. She was in shock, unable to cry anymore. David held her hand, but she didn't seem to notice. "Mrs. Harper, I'm so sorry for your loss," the doctor said quietly. "Is there anyone we can call for you?" David shook his head. They didn't have much family and he didn't want to make those phone calls yet. He just wanted to hold his wife and try to figure out how they would survive this. Maggie was arrested and charged with manslaughter. Her lawyer argued that it was an accident during a struggle, that she never meant to hurt the baby. But Emily knew the truth. The trial was a nightmare. Maggie's friends testified that Emily had been difficult and argumentative. They painted her as an unstable young mother who had attacked poor Mrs. Thompson. "I saw them fighting," said one neighbor. Emily was very aggressive. But other neighbors told the truth. "I heard Maggie screaming about throwing the baby inside. She was completely out of control." Emily had to testify about the worst day of her life. She stood in front of the courtroom and told them exactly what happened. "She grabbed my baby and threw him like he was a piece of trash. She killed my son because she was angry about trash cans." Maggie cried on the witness stand. "I never meant for anything to happen to that poor baby. It was a tragic accident. I was trying to calm everyone down." But Emily knew those tears were fake. During breaks in the trial, she saw Maggie laughing with her lawyer, confident she would get away with it. The jury found Maggie guilty, but the sentence was light, only 5 years in prison with the possibility of parole in 2 years. The judge said he was being lenient because of Maggie's age and lack of previous criminal record. Emily collapsed in the courtroom. 5 years? For murdering my baby? David caught her as she fell. As they left the courthouse, he saw Maggie smiling at her supporters. That smile burned into his memory. Back home, Emily couldn't function. She sat in Luke's nursery for hours, holding his blankets, smelling his scent. She stopped eating, stopped sleeping. David was terrified he was going to lose her too. You have to eat something," he would beg, but she just shook her head. "What's the point?" she whispered. "She took everything from us." David tried to be strong for both of them, but rage was eating him alive. Every night, he went out to the garage and punched his heavy bag until his knuckles bled. It wasn't enough. Nothing would be enough except making Maggie pay. He started thinking about it seriously when he found out Maggie was out on bail pending her appeal. She was back in her house across the street, acting like nothing had happened. She even hosted HOA meetings, complaining about other neighbors. One evening, David was watching through the blinds when he saw her laughing with friends on her porch. "The Harpers were always trouble," she said loudly enough for him to hear. "Maybe now this neighborhood can get back to normal." Emily heard it too and threw a vase against the wall. How can she say that? How can she act like Luke never mattered? That night, David went to his old hiding place in the attic and found the revolver he'd kept from his youth. He'd grown up in a rough neighborhood where sometimes you had to protect yourself. He'd hoped never to need it again, but now, he started planning carefully. He knew about forensics from crime shows, knew he had to be smart about it. The gun was unregistered, bought on the street years ago. If he disposed of it properly, there would be no way to trace it back to him. But doubt ate at him too. Was he becoming a monster like Maggie? Would Luke want him to do this? Then Emily found out she was pregnant again. The doctor was worried because of her stress and poor health. "This pregnancy is high risk," he warned. "You need complete rest and no stress, or you could lose this baby too." That's when David knew what he had to do. For Emily, for their unborn child, for Luke's memory. Maggie had to pay. David waited for the right night. It came 3 weeks later, a violent thunderstorm that would cover any sounds and wash away evidence. Emily was asleep, exhausted from pregnancy and grief. David kissed her forehead and whispered, "I love you. This is for our family." He slipped out into the storm wearing dark clothes and a hood. The rain was coming down in sheets and lightning lit up the sky. Perfect cover. He made his way across the street to Maggie's house. Through her large living room window, he could see her sitting in her favorite chair, watching television and drinking tea. She looked so peaceful, so content. Like she hadn't destroyed a family. David crouched behind her bushes, the gun heavy in his hand. Memories flooded his mind, holding Luke for the first time, Emily's smile when they brought him home, the sound of his tiny laugh. Then the blood on the concrete, Emily's screams, the funeral. "For my son," he whispered, raising the gun. The bullet shattered the window and hit Maggie in the chest. She dropped her teacup, eyes wide with shock and pain. For a moment, their eyes met through the broken glass. Then she slumped forward, blood spreading across her floral nightgown. David ran back through the storm, his heart pounding. He threw the gun into the river on his way home, watching it disappear into the dark water. By the time he got back, he was soaked through. He showered quickly and slipped back into bed beside Emily. She stirred but didn't wake up. "David," she mumbled. "I'm here, love. Go back to sleep." The next morning, police cars surrounded Maggie's house. She had been found dead by her housekeeper, shot through the window. The storm had washed away any evidence and there were no witnesses. Emily woke to the sirens. "What's happening?" she asked, looking out the window. David pretended to be surprised. "I don't know. Let me check the news." When they learned that Maggie was dead, Emily's reaction surprised him. Instead of shock or sadness, she looked relieved. "She can't hurt anyone else now," she said quietly. The police questioned everyone in the neighborhood, including David and Emily. "Where were you last night during the storm?" the detective asked. "Home with my pregnant wife," David answered calmly. "The thunder was so loud we could barely sleep." Emily nodded. "David was with me all night. I would have noticed if he left." The investigation went nowhere. Police decided it was probably a random burglary gone wrong. Maggie had some expensive jewelry that wasn't taken, but they assumed the burglar was scared off by the gunshot. Some neighbors suspected David, but there was no proof. Others were secretly glad Maggie was gone. "She made a lot of enemies," one neighbor told police. Could have been anyone. Emily's pregnancy progressed better after Maggie's death. Without the constant stress and harassment, she was able to eat and sleep again. "I feel like I can breathe for the first time in months," she told David. Their daughter was born healthy and beautiful. They named her Lily after Emily's grandmother. She had Luke's blue eyes and Emily's smile. "She's perfect," Emily cried, holding her daughter for the first time. David watched his wife and daughter with tears in his eyes. "Luke sent her to us," he said. "I know he did." They moved away from Willow Creek a few months later. Too many bad memories in that house. They found a smaller place in a quiet town with friendly neighbors and no HOA. Emily went back to teaching and David found work at a local garage. They went to therapy together to deal with their grief and trauma. Slowly they began to heal. 5 years passed. Lily grew into a happy, bright little girl who filled their house with laughter. She looked so much like Luke that sometimes it took Emily's breath away. They kept Luke's picture on the mantle, and every year on his birthday they visited his grave. "Tell your brother about your day at school," Emily would say to Lily. Lily would sit by the headstone and chatter about her friends, her drawings, her favorite books. David and Emily believed Luke could hear her. One evening as they tucked Lily into bed, she asked the question they'd been expecting. "Mommy, why did my brother have to die?" Emily sat on the edge of the bed, choosing her words carefully. "Sometimes bad things happen to good people, sweetheart. But Luke is watching over us from heaven, and he loves you very much. Will I see him someday?" "Yes, baby. Someday we'll all be together again." After Lily fell asleep, David and Emily sat on their porch swing. "Do you ever think about her?" Emily asked. She didn't have to say Maggie's name. "Sometimes," David admitted. "Do you think I was wrong?" Emily was quiet for a long time. "She took our baby. She would have kept making our lives hell until we had nothing left. You protected our family. It doesn't bring Luke back." "No," Emily said sadly. "Nothing can do that. But at least she can't hurt anyone else." They sat in comfortable silence, listening to the crickets and watching the stars. Inside, Lily slept peacefully, safe and loved. Their story was one of unimaginable loss, burning rage and ultimate justice. The pain of losing Luke would never completely go away, but they had learned to carry it together. In the end, love had won over hatred and their family had survived. David had taken a life to save his family, and while that would always weigh on his conscience, he knew he would make the same choice again. Some lines once crossed cannot be uncrossed. Some crimes demand their own form of justice. In the quiet suburbs where they now lived, no one knew their story. They were just another family, a mother, father, and daughter living their lives. But Emily and David would always remember the son they lost and the lengths they went to for justice. Late at night, when Lily was asleep and the house was quiet, they would sometimes talk about Luke. They would remember his tiny fingers, his soft breathing, his sweet baby smell. And they would know that everything they had done was for him.